Have you seen anything yet that you won't sign? Is there still horse trading going on?
Well, I know you never like my answers to these kind of questions, but let me be consistent
Keep
after 8
trying.
years. It's always fair to ask, but as a practical mayor, other than initiatives we start, I don't comment on things until they get to my desk and after I've made a decision. So I'm waiting to see what they send me. And what I would say is I'm going to look at from what I believe is the best public policy answer for the state of Michigan, just like I have for 8 years.
Do you worry they're overreaching with some of these bills, the bills to strip power from the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the gutting of the 2 ballot proposals? Have you been working with them at all on those to sort of pull them back in?
Largely, they've set their own course on this. So what I would say is I'm waiting to see what comes to my desk, and I'll review it in a thoughtful fashion. Lame ducks traditionally have quite a few more bills. I mean, I've seen it every 2 years now. We get a burst of probably 200 plus additional bills over what you would normally expect.
Are there items that on your list, on your to-do list, that you think just aren't going to get done, you're going to have to set aside?
Well, again, if I look back on things that I wish we could have done more on, the one that stands out probably most prominently would be no fault.
No fault insurance
Yeah.
reform, okay.
That needs to happen. And I tell people I view it more as not as much a partisan question as a special interest question. Special interests have been effective in essentially leveraging partisanship and other things to confuse the issue enough to prevent some major reforms. But those reforms need to happen.
What's it going to take to get it done?
I think it's getting closer to that point because I think the public is now turning their attention to really talking about it. And I think from both a legislative and the incoming governor, I think that it was clear a lot of people campaigned on no-fault reform.
What else didn't you get done that you wish you had?
Well, that would be the biggest one, Nolan. Again, if you go through the list, I can give you the list at some point. I mean, we had a list of
I'm sure
the
you have it
hundreds.
in your pocket.
I do. This is the 2017. We're working on the 2018 version, and part of the comment I gave people, it's a good thing there are term limits. I'm not tall enough to hold the list up
We
anymore.
got a stool. Education, you satisfied with what you were able to do for schools and education performance? We are still, as a state, not much better performing than when you come in.
No, again, that would be an illustration of still working on A to F. I think we could use a better accountability system.
Okay.
I think there's still improvements within the educational system that need to take place. I'm proud of some of the things we've done, and it's interesting. We've done so many things, and it's been enough years. People have forgotten some of the great things that have really taken place. What we did in early childhood. I mean, we led the nation. We invested $130 million over 2 years. So literally, we put tens of thousands of kids the opportunity to have preschool that didn't before. That's really cool. And then at the other end of the spectrum, what we've done with apprenticeships, the Marshall Plan is huge. These are all good things. What I would say is what we didn't is get enough through the entire K-12 kind of system of just getting better performance.
So take a look at these 8 years, where the state was when you came in, where it is when you're leaving, and assess your own performance over those 8 years.
Well, my own performance, I've never viewed that as relevant. I mean, as a practical mayor. And I said that. If you go back to...
Well, are you satisfied?
I'm asked to be measured on 2 things as governor. Did I do what I said I was going to do? And secondly, did I build a long-term foundation for success that had nothing to do with me? And I'm satisfied that we built a strong foundation. If you looked at it, we had among the highest unemployment in the nation. We're at 3.9%. We had lost more jobs than anybody. We've created over 560,000 private sector jobs. Look at Detroit. Detroit was the most troubled urban area in our country for how many years? Now it's viewed as one of the most exciting places in our country, and young people want to come from around the world to live and work in this city, and it's climbing fast. We've got 600,000 people plus that have health care today. We've improved their lives.
You're going to turn government over now to people who may not share those priorities, may not share your philosophies. In your view, what has to remain in place to keep Michigan on a positive track?
Yeah, first of all, the concept of relentless positive action. I mean, to be open with you, because our country is in serious trouble about the lack of civility at the national level. That's the greatest threat to our country. And I think with having a divided government, there's an opportunity to say if they want to get things done, they need to find common ground to work together And much of that, I am biased, but I believe it should be based on taking what we've done and actually improving it, how they can take it and make it better, and really implement some of these things. If you looked at everything from the Marshall Plan, that's a 5-year plan. That's a plan that can basically revolutionize how people get educated and how people find employment and how people get great careers for our entire nation. They should keep that going. I don't care about credit. I just want them have them succeed with it, because that's the best answer for all of us. So that's one great illustration. But again, road funding. We've got all these resources now coming in for road funding. The money's there. Now spend it wisely. One thing that most people don't know, because it's not exciting stuff, is we've been extremely responsible to the point where we're one of the few places that you can look anyone in the eye and say, not only are our citizens better off today because of how we've managed things, how we're paying down our long-term debt, our pension liabilities and such, but future generations that aren't even born yet are better off. Compare that to the national level, where we're saying our life today is only somewhat better because we're doing it at the expense of those kids with what we're doing to our national debt. In Michigan, we've gone the other way and to say they actually have less debt than we started. Isn't that cool? It's not exciting, it's not dynamic, but stay on the path to keep doing it.
That's true if these practices continue,
Yeah.
and if these programs continue. Which of them do you think are most vulnerable?
One that could be vulnerable, because this was a concern either way. We're putting $1 billion a year aside to make sure we're paying the retirement obligations for the school employees and for state employees. That's a huge amount of money. That was not being done
long-term
before.
plan, right?
Yeah, it's got to stay. It was originally 2038. And that's why I always made that comment. If you want a cool job, run for governor in 2038, because it would be so exciting. But the other part is it is something that could go off track. It wasn't being funded before. It's legislative, so people could go grab that money. I would never want to see that happen, because it's something that people are not feeling pain today. It's the right thing to do, and shouldn't we fulfill our pension obligations?
So you built up a rainy day fund
Yeah.
of what, about $1 billion now? Pretty
Billion
close?
two.
Billion two. How important is maintaining a rainy day fund? Because you hear people talk about, well, we could use the rainy day fund for this, we could grab it for that. How important is it to maintain that?
It's important to maintain it. And what I would say is again, there's nothing near term on the horizon if you looked at the U of M economic forecast, but there could be a slowdown over the next few years. What I would say is the rainy day fund should be saved for when there is a true economic slowdown, and it shouldn't be used too dramatically or too quickly.
How closely are you working with your successor?
Closely. And they've been very good discussions. I've met with her every week. I've got meetings scheduled next week with her. Our teams are meeting at all different levels. We've been working on this for a year, regardless of who won. But I would say in the context of now that the election's over, I would have to give her positive credit for doing a good job of reaching out and having good dialogue.
When you look at your governorship, I mean, it was rolling along very nicely until you hit Flint.
Yeah.
Personally, have you made peace with Flint?
Well, I always have issues with Flint because it was a terrible thing to have happen. And again, some of the people involved, we had failures at all levels of government, but some of the people involved, particularly in the so-called experts in water, made some bad calls in my view, and they work for me. So I did what I thought you should always do, is take responsibility for that, and so that's something that I won't forget. But we've tried to turn that to a learning experience. If you look at what we're doing with PFAS, we're the nation's leader in taking on an emerging environmental issue that involves water, largely.
Representative Elijah Cummings has suggested he might want to bring you back to Washington. Are you going to go if he calls?
Well, again, I don't know for what, because again, we cooperated, I testified, we sent all the information. I'm somewhat confused because I don't know what the question is that hasn't already been answered.
A good piece of what you'll be remembered for is your involvement in Detroit. You put the city into emergency manager and then into bankruptcy. Were you certain that was going to work?
No, you couldn't be certain. And actually, as I recall, there weren't a lot of people telling me how successful I was going to be at that point in time. Most people thought I was crazy, but it worked. People rallied. I mean, to have legislators from the UP to the Lake Michigan shoreline being excited about supporting the grand bargain. And the great part is they've seen the benefit now. I mean, Detroit's comeback has been a good thing for every corner of Michigan.
So we talked about the state's future. What is Rick Snyder's future?
One of the things I would hope to do is do some teaching. I always talked about that, help some startups, help some boards, both nonprofit and for-profit. But then I have an interest in public policy. What I think I have a skill set of, and I think hopefully you've seen that, are things like mobility, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, privacy, and civility, and do it in a civil fashion. And those are huge societal topics that we're not discussing enough in our world today.
Sounds
That
like
if
a
there's
think
role-
tank in your future.
Something, I'm waiting to see what may come up.